Thank you kindly, and I see Karen has some of you trained to stay seated. So, as you heard, my name is Gerard. I am an activist that specializes in issues that are affecting men in higher education. And my experience is largely working on a single university, that is Kennesaw State University, which is located about 30 miles north of Atlanta in the United States. And Kennesaw State had a reputation of being a kind of commuter school. Its specialization was in its business program. And that meant that if you want to get your MBA, it's a good place to go. But at the same time, for most people, it was convenient. It was close to home. It was close to work. But now it is one of the 50 largest universities in the United States after a big merger with an engineering school called Southern Polytechnic nearby. Now, this makes it a very important site for future discussions and one of the sources of interpretation for the government, media, and everyday conversation. Now, what I've done is at first I had kind of my own personal needs that I needed to have addressed. I was looking for a support network for men on Kennesaw State. And I did find one, and it was called the Gentlemen's Club, which is not something you would associate with support networks. So they said it was a men's-only group. I attended. It was run by a therapist, and he sounded very passionate, very caring about young men. And I listened to him, and I thought, I want to help this out. So after our first meeting, I sat down with him. There was not many of us there. It was a very low turnout. They were just getting started themselves. And I asked him, what can I do to help? And he says, well, could you help promote us? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. And he says to me, well, you see, what we're doing is we're doing a kind of experiment. And what we want each of the men here, since it's a therapeutic experiment, this is fairly standard for some, but the terms I wasn't sure about. The idea is that each of the members of this group had to sign a waiver. And this waiver said that they agreed not to socialize with each other, even outside of the group setting. So, and there was no there's no time limit on this. It's not do this for a couple weeks and then you can talk to each other again. It's just, these people, you only talk to them under our supervision. Now, the intent of the study, I'm not sure. I wasn't familiar enough with the academic backgrounds of the therapists. My concern was, why would I sign away my ability to make friends, which is one of the things I would really like to do here. Or at least the ability to make friends outside your supervision. He didn't take the question well. Returned with very unwelcome comments about me, my family, and I cut contact. I looked around campus some more and realized that was the best they had for men. That was it. So I thought, I didn't know what better looked like, but I wanted to try something. So I started the student organization, then called KSU Men, KSUM for short, and it snowballed from there, to put it lightly. It started just as me at a table. I would advertise and people would come up, and I eventually got some officers. We got to 23 members at our peak. And our activities included maintaining regular contributions to a food pantry to feed homeless students, our own conference where Paul Elam, Janice Villa Mango, Karen Strawn, and other big names came down, and we had a wonderful time. And again, thank you to all of you again for coming down and for that support, and to those of you who supported that effort. It then escalated and even became national. Kennesaw State got very angry and said, you have KSU in your name, so rebrand. And we rebranded to Zen Men. And now Zen Men acts as an incubator of sorts. So if other people wanted to start their own student organizations and perform lobbying efforts and advance the interests of young men who are getting past the challenges of adolescence and the coming of age, then all of the hostility that comes in the university campus, they can come to us. And they can figure out what it means to not only be a leader, but also how to operationalize all of their efforts. So that's Zen Men, but I'm not going to be talking much about the issues in this presentation because, quite honestly, everyone else is giving you excellent coverage on this. What I'm going to be talking about is more the practicalities. Now, I'm more educated in the living oxymoron that is American education. And those of you in the audience, not all of you are students. You're all from different, many of you are from different countries. So given the limited scope of my operations, what I intend to do is give you an appreciation for the general process and means of defending yourselves in the event that you are a student or a student that's going out and trying these things for yourself in Western education and broader things. But at the same time, if you're not a student, I want you to gain an appreciation of the kind of work, and if you're out doing your own things and you happen to be in an environment that is in some ways so similar to the formalities that universities impose on you, this presentation may help you too. So I want you to project yourself into that situation. You are a new, just brand new student. You're on campus, and you're thinking, where can I go from here, and what can I do if I wanted to make a difference in my community? And this is one of those things that's very challenging for people, because if you're brand new, like I was, you don't know what you don't know. And you think to yourself, what are the questions I can even ask? When you're in that position, you finally realize, well, I just gave myself the first step. I just admitted I know nothing. So what you do is you ask rambling questions to every teacher around you until eventually you're guided to the office that lets you start student organizations. And this was an attractive option. The reason student organizations and that level of formality at this level was very good, and why I'm not going off to just a bar and having some guys together every so often, was because student organizations command a tremendous amount of influence, as it turns out. And you'll see that in a few slides. So, I do want to also put up front that what you're about to see is tremendous work. And I want to scare each of you. Because if you are going to go into this, you need to be ready for anything. You need to have a passion up front, because it will take away the soul that I don't have to begin with, so that's fine. And when you are facing the upcoming, and in some ways, inevitable challenges, and even attempts at sabotage, which are fun, you need to be ready. But we're going to assume you are. So where do you go? What you're going to end up doing when you approach the office that manages student organizations, you walk up to the defeated cubicle drone at the front, and you ask them, what do I do? And they give you a form. Pretty much when you're in the UK and Canada and the United States, you have to fill out this form. And that form says, who are you? What are you doing? What is your organization? And by the way, prove that people want this. So what that entails is you need signatures. You've got to have a petition. You've got to go around campus and market yourself. On top of that, you need officers. And even more so, you need teachers on board too. So if you have a controversial topic and you're worried about what's going to happen to you, already you're thinking, oh God, am I going to die when I start? But turns out, some of this is actually the easy part. Let's start with the signatures, the students. This is really easy because you can actually present yourself with something totally uncontroversial at the opening to get signatures quickly. So if you were to come up and say, hi, I want to assist young men who are suicidal or thinking about suicide and connecting them to a national hotline. Uncontroversial topic. And if you use that as a focus, your organization may be about that, or it may be an objective later on down the line, but you can use that as an excellent point to help get support, to help people understand your morals, your values, your principles, call them what you want. So you'll get those signatures pretty quickly. The thing that I'd advise people, though, do not be the human pop-up ad. That is, you go out, you get a flyer or something to advertise and get people to sign your stuff, and you just walk around campus, and you just hand it to people and say, hey, well, basically, throw this away for me. No one Of course, no disrespect to those who want to advertise their services and pass out flyers to spread information. It's just a question of these students are busy. They're all over the place. They have classes, and if you give them something, you're basically saying, here's another thing. They don't want another thing. In fact, they would like to think you're offering something that takes away stress. And that's how you sell yourself. What I've done to gain signatures is I would go to class as normal. And I would sit down with people, and I get to know them. While I wait for people, namely the shoe-scuffing teacher's assistant to unlock the door before class each day, I would just get to know these students and then just really let them talk. I would ask them what their position on gender issues were, naturally lead to that part of the conversation. Don't just bring it up, because that seems weird. Again, human pop-up. But what you end up doing is you get them thinking about it, you get them passionate about it, and then you offer the uncontroversial opinion, uncontroversial position, you get a signature. So, once you have the signatures, then it's time for officers. This is a little harder. Now you need dedicated volunteers to start the organization with you. Now, in some parts, in some ways, the university is a little concerned, right? They don't want you to just start an organization yourself, because that still doesn't illustrate enough demand. The officers are there to show that this is more of a community project. So what you do is when you make yourself visible, what I did is, again, 6-foot table, banner Velcro to the front, right here. People would just come up, and we would just chat about whatever. It doesn't have to be about gender issues. Just make it fun conversation, and people enjoy themselves. But if they ask, what's this about? And their response to your answer is, sign me up. That passion indicates officer material. The thing is, if you make yourself visible, the leaders will reciprocate by announcing themselves as well. And this is the waiting game. This is one of those challenges where you sit out here and you sit there thinking, how can I'm so impatient, right? You wait for officers, you wait for just people to come in and just do things for you. And it will happen, but you have to wait a while. I did this, there was high pressure too. KSU in particular had a limit. 3, you get to do this tabling thing when you're not a student organization, 3 times. If you don't get anybody, the officers in those 3 times, obviously there's not enough demand, you're cut off from that marketing option. Now, but let's say you are in that bad position. No one's volunteering. Or they come up and say, I like what you're doing, but I just can't do it, for I'm scared, or I have too much work, or some other just thing that it could be an excuse or a valid reason, right? At that point, you can use what I call the minimum effort argument. It's a kind of a sales close. You know, schools, they open up like anime clubs, movie clubs, where people literally just sit on couches. Their treasurer, line items are popcorn and sodas. Universities are only concerned about the structure indicating community interest. But when it comes to day-to-day operations, they don't care. They don't care what you're doing, really. They're concerned about the movement of money. They're concerned about the benefit it brings to the community, and that's about it. So what you can do is say to the student, the officer that you're trying to get, find somebody who's relatively passionate and say, dude, I just need a name on paper. I mean, and if you're really desperate, you can bribe them with lunch. But I've never had to do that. But the thing is, it's actually pretty easy to tell somebody that it's okay. I mean, you don't have to be under a lot of pressure. We're just a bunch of guys, and we just want to get this thing kind of rolling. And people are actually pretty receptive to that. They'll sign up, and they'll help you. And I actually put my clicker aside here. So now you have your officers. Now you need what's called a faculty sponsor or an advisor. Some schools use those terms synonymously, but others, they have solid distinctions. At KSU, they were synonymous. An advisor is somebody who connects you to the school services. They cannot tell the organization what to do, because it's a student organization, can't vote. And if they try to vote, they will get in trouble. That's how solid this is. That's how hard the policy is. And with these advisors, you need to have more than one. I'll tell you why as we go into efforts at sabotage. Advisors are the people who try to nurture your passion and who are aware enough of school policies to let you know that there are alternatives, something sometimes that will make things more streamlined, or if you're about to really mess things up. Now, with an advisor, you kind of have to be the human pop-up ad, unfortunately. I had to go door to door. Hi, stranger, could you please do things for me? That was it. You had to come in and say to these advisors, I really need to have, in essence, a faculty endorsement that reflects interest. And they, in turn, will see this as work. You don't want it to seem like work. Now, you can find an advisor pretty easily if you are already good friends with them and you're well networked with the school. But when you are looking for an advisor and you are concerned with not finding any at all, go back to the minimum effort argument. The more you just make it seem like just paperwork, I just need your signature on a couple things, you'll end up getting it. And then you get to the last step. The last step is people will approve if your organization will exist. Now, if they say no, you know about the Ryerson University conflicts where you got a corrupt student union or something of that nature who say no to your organization and then try to ban that kind of organization later. In that case, take the Robert Downey Jr. approach. Just smile, yes, say, agree to everything, but do what you want after you get in. In that case, it's really just a matter of once you get in, the only way they can fight you later is, I'm sorry, there's this feedback loop coming out. Forgive any artifacts there. But when you end up getting that student organization approved, this is a moment of celebration, and this is why. If you see here, this is actually a receipt from the conference that KSUN hosted. This is a receipt for the venue in particular. These are the costs in total. Go to $600 for the venue. That's basically free. That's almost nothing. And the reason is student fees give you immense discounts since you've already basically paid for these by virtue of your tuition. Having a student organization gives you tremendous influence because all of these things, all of these services go down and cost a lot. And that means you can organize events quickly with very little financial support. You end up gaining velocity. You just get like a few friends, throw in a few 20s, you get a room that can hold 400 people. This is why you want a student organization. These unspoken discounts, all of these things become your playthings. You get these tools. You get to rent out equipment. It's Candyland. And no one advertises this. Not really. Libraries, they have databases for your research, that all these numbers that you will never be able to find on Google. I mean it. They will not appear because they're often not indexed. Now they're there. Databases that previously take subscriptions, and your advisors will sign off on almost all of this. I mean, you get all of these services that previously you had to account for in private spaces. But these public spaces give you so much. And that is why when you have a student organization and you have people who are passionate about it and who are able to use these tools, all of that just becomes so fluid. So moving on quickly. What if you're broke? If you have no money, honestly, do not use university money. If you use university money, there are more strings attached to state money than there are dollars you'll be able to spend anyway. KSU men only got like $400. $400 a year. Great, thanks. But even then, if you were to ever use it, you have to use a set of approved vendors. You could not do anything without getting it approved all the time. So you end up having to go out and talk to your community. All of you were the reason KSU men were able to do so much, including lobbying the police department, including finding new ways to get IPV counseling services to, in essence, rethink everything they're doing and checking on how they approach men and women. Now, once you have the money, once you have the advisors, once you have the connections, you're at a fork in the road. And this is where you can't really prescribe anything. You're open. You're a political player now. And it sounds kind of Machiavellian to say that, but yeah, you do need money and connections to really play. But at this point, now I can only get to the fun stuff. And this is more about how to escalate and how to deal with people who try to sabotage you. The sabotage is where many of us are interested, right? This horrible thing happened to the student. How can you avoid that? Now, when it comes to escalation, this is when it comes to what you're trying to do. You're trying to lobby people to rethink what they're doing. At first, you could just ask. You see something wrong? Find somebody who's immediately in charge, like a professor, right? You approach them and you say, this is kind of messed up. Could you try this instead? And what they'll do is, if they say no, you try to propose something, sometimes to the supervisor. If that doesn't work either, you try to get into a state of negotiation. Negotiation is going to mean that you say, look, this is not really going to work for us. And if you have your students behind you, at that point, your student fees and any leverage that you happen to have at the time will put people in a position where they can see what they can do if you offer something in return. And why is that important? Because everyone on campus doesn't have to do a damn thing you say. They don't. This is something I had to learn when I was lobbying. When I was looking at the self-defense courses in particular, when you go up and you say to somebody, I need you to change your approach. In particular, what I was doing, there was a self-defense course that was teaching women how to basically beat the living hell out of men. But men were told to get out of every situation and were given no self-defense training at all. And they actually had this thing where they had lobster suits and they would simulate attacks on men and women. But the men were not supposed to fight back at all. The women were just kneeing the guy in the crotch. And the guy, the attacker, was always called the rad man, the rape, aggression, defense man, even if it was a woman doing the attacking. So I just went, I went over and had to pressure, escalate, negotiate, and found out they don't have to, they just do like an Outlook filter. If from Sage Gerard moved to trash, that's it. And they ignore it, hard ignore, because they don't have to take any orders. They don't have to take, even if their complaint they're getting is right, they don't have to do anything. And that's extremely important because it means leverage. You need leverage. And leverage means you can pressure. And as you get to that point where you can pressure, that may open up negotiation. You want to stay as low on this process as possible. You only go up when you need to and try to go back down when you can. So, sabotage. What happens if somebody says, you're a rapist, you're part of the KKK, oh my God, I hate you so much, and they end up spreading rumors about you. And I was the subject of 3 different false claims. And they all were trying to say I was going to silence and destroy all women, basically. Now, one of the things you need is active defense, and that means a recording device. This is mine. It's also pictured on screen. It's about 2 layers to it. The outer layer, backpack strap. You can put it right here on a backpack. It's always accessible. Inner strap you can use to kind of fold in, stick the microphone end out. So you can always keep it here, recording and sticking out like that. So you can just walk around and it's active, and it's a little discreet. And also, this thing is your buddy. It will get you out of some very tight jams. And one thing I can tell you, that recorder has seen some crap, right? It even captured the events of Calgary Expo Gate, and that recorder in particular. And it's got lots of basically things that if it didn't capture it, people would be in serious trouble. So that is an active form of protection. But people say always be recording, but it's more always be recording when it's legal. Check your recording laws, and every school has an attorney. Talk to the attorney. It's free, and whenever you go up to them, they'll make sure that you know the rules. Now, here, you're going to be dealing also with gossip, with a false accusation. KSU Men in particular dealt with attempts to disarm the organization by the advisor itself being scared away. The advisors were contacted and told, Sage Gerard in particular is an evil man, and that's fine, but it ends up scaring them off. They don't want to be a part of it anymore, which puts the organization at risk of freezing. In order to protect yourself from this, you need to be well networked. This is a more passive form of protection. The passive protection means you go out and you get to know the police yourself beforehand first, right? When they first hear your name, you want them to have a good impression of you, of who you are. If they see you as a good person first, this aids you in future attempts to hurt your character. And this brings me close to the conclusion of my presentation. What I've been telling you is a general outline of what it looks like to start a student organization, why you want to do it. You want to do it because you get an immense amount of leverage quickly. You're in command implicitly of a lot of money quickly because of severe discounts that lets you do large-scale movements and events for very little money. When you are attempting to protect yourself, the recording device is, of course, an active form of protection. Making sure you're well networked is a passive form of protection. And the ways that you would, in turn, try to maintain this effort is a matter of always trying to keep in good spirits, keep a casual way of staying in protection, of staying in a sense of camaraderie with other young men on campus. And in turn, you end up creating a real chance for change. Everyone on campus is really willing to help you. And you end up creating this amazing thing where you are able to approach deans, associate deans, assistant deans, and the dean of students himself, and they will actually listen to you. They will change their programs, and they will even stand up for you in the event that they see somebody is actively trying to sabotage your work. So with that, I want each of you to understand that other students may be thinking about starting their own student organizations one day, and you need to support them. University is where students come of age. This is where you are meant to start adulthood. And as it stands right now, adulthood is threatened. We have weaponized the tattletale. We have taken the means of getting somebody in trouble and made it easy. And now people have to try to survive that while being encouraged implicitly to buy into ideologies that tell them getting people into trouble like this is okay. And that young men are especially at risk. And now, I want you all to just take one thing away from this, and that is our children matter. They are going to be speaking up for themselves more and more, and it's really time to offer them every ounce of support that we have to institutionalize their voice in a university campus. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, questions for Sage Gerard?
Well, I don't need the microphone. It's not so much a question as a suggestion. Universities in the U.S., I can't speak for England, have policies where students cannot be drunk. They also have policies where you cannot record interactions. Now, I'm curious why you don't take this approach now. If there is an accusation, the policy about being drunk is suspended so the person can go through with the accusation. But yet, when you are defending yourself against an accusation, why do they not suspend the policy on having recorded the evidence? So to me, that is a prime Title IX discrimination issue, because they are allowing a suspension of a policy for an accusation, but not allowing a suspension of a policy for a defense.
Absolutely. The Clery Act and the extensions it got from the Violence Against Women Act in the United States in particular make it easy for accusers and those who are trying to make advances against, well, obviously the accused, of in essence, letting them slide in many different ways. You could, of course, claim the same thing, but I'm going to try to take on both of the things you were talking about, one with recording and the other about drunken interactions. In these instances, if you were to end up having somebody make that chess move against you, so to speak, in the middle of the interaction, you're in a very bad position if you're a young man, and there's not really much way out of it. And what you would want to do is honestly avoidance. If you want to try to avoid getting into these situations in the first place, I am an advocate of, if somebody, for example, said, you cannot record an interaction, you want to try to find out if that would be something that would happen in advance and avoid that interaction. And I'll give you an example. I was in dispute with a department head, and it was a very corrupt individual. I found out I was trying to get a mediation with her to resolve a dispute that had to do with this very, very long story that's currently online right now. But what ended up happening was, if I went into this mediation, I couldn't record it. And anything that was said in there would be treated as hearsay in court if there was a litigation later. What that meant was I was not going to pursue the mediation at all. And similarly, if a young man is about to date somebody he doesn't know, or even just get drunk and party a little too hard, just one of the things that needs to be considered as a risk is not just, of course, the hangover and all that. There must be considered as a risk that the young woman or just anybody else who just has a beef against this guy is going to be doing exactly what you're talking about. Duck under accountability, be exempt from the rules, and try to destroy this man's life, which should be a sign that young men should avoid that whole approach to begin with. Stay off campus with this stuff, because campuses run on their own set of rules. This is an expansion of power, and they have basically their own criminal justice system. They set those rules. Stay away from it. Anyone else?
I kind of think that after Mark Pearson's experience, maybe you should record your life 24/7, just so you have an. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're on campus or not. You can be accused whether you've ever or not interacted with anybody. So you might need the alibi. If you're alone at home eating popcorn, you have no alibi unless you have 24/7 surveillance.
One of the things it's tempting to have yourself under 24/7 surveillance. Now at home, of course, you can have your own CCTV operation up if you wanted to, right? But another example I can give you is, say there was this really insane individual I ended up debating during my time at Kennesaw State University named Brian Klein. Brian Klein had a criminal record. He was out to, in essence, perform character assassinations, do whatever he needed to do, involve the police if it meant harming the organization and harming efforts to help men and boys. He had this he was just a very dangerous individual, and when I went out and I met him to negotiate debate terms, I got in the car with him. He wanted me to come help him move stuff out of his wife's house, and he was very threatening, so I recorded, obviously. I turned on the recorder, I got in the car. Now, in Georgia, where I'm from, we have a law that says you can only record on somebody's private property without their consent if you are doing so for the purposes of aiding a criminal investigation or crime prevention. And that was the clause I was operating under when I turned on that recorder. The idea being, I think I'm at risk here because of his criminal record, assault, larceny, and the way he treats people and what I've heard about him. I got to be monitoring this guy. Now, by the time I got out, there was nothing on that recording that I was okay. But what that meant was that this recording, it was on private property and it was not with his consent, which means I can't distribute that. Even if there was something that happened later, I can't be using anything like that. And that's against the law. So what it means is, if you're going to be taking the stance that you are going to be good for following the rules and making sure everybody's following the same rules, you have to be careful of those exceptions and what the law says in your jurisdiction. Because if you end up trying to use recordings that are against the law or obtained illegally, it might end up getting dismissed. So what point was it? Why even bother recording it in the first place? It never helped you. And all it would do is it will make people on the ground, yeah, they maybe support you more, but the courts won't see it that way. So you can record 24/7, but that doesn't mean 24/7. All that 24/7 footage will be all used at once. It won't be all considered.
Hello. So basically, most of us here, I think, are beyond university going age. So the question was about, if you are sort of working and your uni days are gone, basically. What is it okay in most institutions to get involved in that, and how is it for bringing other people, I guess as members who aren't, because like I know in Bristol, I think you have to pay a money to join the student union if you're beyond university age. So I just wondered if you knew a little bit about this.
I think I need a little more clarification on your question. So if somebody leaves the university and they want to participate in a university organization after the fact?
Starting a society, if you're not
Sure.
part of the uni, bringing people in who aren't part of the uni as well, and sort of building it from there. Yeah.
Student organizations are often, well, one thing, if you're alumni already gives you access. If you can go to alumni associations and get in correspondence with either fraternities or other student organizations as a means of being a part of their events. You can be a guest to all of these things without much resistance from the school. So your option is, if you're going to your alma mater, join your alumni association and participate through the programs there, and you'll be fine in that sense. If you're going to another university and you're out to, in essence, join something else, then that's going to be harder because you're an off-campus person. Now, if you want to, of course, you can find ways of getting in contact with any of these student organizations on Facebook, which is, unmoderated by the school, and then you can suggest meeting up with them off-campus, and then at that point, perform whatever operations or just have fun, as it were.
Hi. Do you have any connections with any organisations in UK universities?
In UK universities, no. The only connection I've had was a student that wanted to start a chapter of Zen Men at Baynor University. But no, there are no formal affiliation with other organizations outside of that.
Okay. Do you want to?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
If I can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely, Paul.
One of the things I noticed about what you were able to accomplish at Kennesaw State was that through your university organization, you had speakers like me, Janice Fiamingo, Karen Strawn, Jonathan Taylor there, talking about these issues. And I just wanted to see if you agreed that one of the great potentials of starting these group organizations on universities is that they can invite speakers from across the board from anywhere they want, effectively bringing events like this into the university campus.
Absolutely. In fact, because of the reason everything's so discounted, it's easier to do so. Leveraging the university and networking with students means that you increase coverage for men's issues in ways where events like this don't have to be once a year. They can be frequent. They can be spread over the entire nation very quickly. And because of that effort, all of the friendships and all of the connections that we draw can end up creating this immense interest and immense ability to lobby all of your administrators from within. So absolutely, I agree. Anyone else?
What about the awareness in general of men's issues among young people?
As in, how aware are they? Yeah. Okay. I found that when asked, they demonstrate a level of awareness that's really largely sentimental. The people who are already educated about the issues that we know of are certainly rare. And when it came to KSU in particular, they serve over 35,000 students. And we got, again, to 23 active members. So that's a very small proportion. Now, when other people are exposed, they would agree with many of the things that are said here, but it's largely fear that kind of puts them back into the shadows. So if you get this perception that people are not really educated, or if they're not out there, they're there. There's actually a lot of people who are supporters, but there is a culture of fear. And there is that culture that kind of keeps people just lurking, just below. So I think that when it came to the educated, small proportion, when it comes to the people who will be educated, who want to understand, very large, silent majority kind of situation in that case.
Did you have trouble bringing any uncomfortable speakers to campus?
I'm sorry?
We're seeing that with Milo Store, for example.
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
We're seeing this with Milo Yiannopoulos. It's dangerous, tour.
Okay, no, the first part of your question is what I missed. So when...
So did you have trouble bringing Paul and Janice?
No, not, I was already well networked with Paul, Janice, and many of the other leaders in the men's rights movement, and when I invited them, the challenge was largely setting up a fundraiser and marketing everything to make sure that they had all the resources necessary to fly them in, make sure they were insured, and had all the lodging necessary. That was the only challenge, but when it came to making sure that they had it, that they were interested and that we had all the connections we needed, that was fine. That was not the challenge. There was no, the only protest we had, like if that's kind of where you're getting at, was honestly not really a threat, because the kind of opposition we had on KSU, which was this organization called KSU Yes Body, they were very strange, but they were not in any way out to blockade doors, pull fire alarms, or things like that. They were annoying, but that was it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sage Gerard.